All right, CNT125 virtual machine. We installed the virtual machine and we just started working with it, so I'm picking up where we left off. Here we're now going to, and we did pings between, and we did our install of our packages on the virtual machine. So we're now going to pick up where we left off, and we want to start working on the virtual machine VNIC settings. We want to actually manipulate these to see what happens to our virtual machine. So on the virtual machine, we're going to go to the network settings. We're going to go to where the network settings are. I'm going to turn this wired NIC off, if you will. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go here to my network settings, Here's where we currently are. I'm going to shut that NIC off, and I'm just going to leave it off. I'm then going to move over to my virtual machine, the hypervisor, and we're going to go in and change the network adapter settings. So up here on the top bar, we're going to go to VM. This is the one we're using, the one we're currently using. So we'll go to VM, and we're going to go to settings. This will open a settings box that looks similar to the options we picked when we installed. We can actually alter these, some of these even on the fly. We're going to go down to the network adapter, and you notice we're set for bridge. That's what we set when we created the virtual machine. We're going to put it on NAT now, and we're going to see what happens to our IP addressing when that occurs. So we'll say OK. We're going to wait a couple seconds for that setting to kind of work its way through. When we do, we should actually see like the on-off button, or the power switch button, if you will, come. Okay, looks like it wants to do some updates. We're going to hold off on that right now and get back to what we're working on. Right here, our power button comes back, if you will. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that back on, and we want to observe what now happens when we set the hypervisor to NAT. The VNIC on here, in the hypervisor, we adjusted the VNIC setting and we changed it to NAT instead of bridged. So this is now the IP address that my Linux machine gets. So if I come back over here to Windows, let's do an IP config again, and we see under Ethernet 3, we see 192.168.10, and over here we see 192.168.159. This is now on a different network because the Windows host machine 192.168.10 network, the hypervisor natted that into a different network. So this is now hidden behind the Windows machine. So from the network, you wouldn't see this, so to speak. This is now being hidden behind the Windows host OS. But I should still have connectivity between the two. So if I open up my command prompt, I should still be able to ping 192.168.10. I believe it was 87 over here. Yeah, 10.87. I still have connectivity to the Windows host machine, and over here, this still has connectivity to 68.159.129. This still has connectivity to, they still have connectivity to each other, but they're no longer on the same network. That is your NAT setting. And in some cases, you might see this IP address change dramatically. If you had a 172 out here or a 10 network out here, this might be a 192 over here, and it's pretty obvious at that point. For us, it's kind of subtle, but it is still right there. That network piece is different. That third octet is different, so it's a different network. Alrighty, now that we've done that change, let's go put it back. Okay, so over here, we're going to shut our NIC off. We'll go up to the VM. We're going to go to settings. We'll go here to our network adapter, and we're going to make sure it's on bridged mode and replicate. That's typically what we're going to use in here, bridged mode. So I want to make sure you knew where to get to or how to get to that to make the change. We'll say OK. Again, we'll give it a couple seconds for that power button to come back, and we will turn that NIC back on, so it should be getting an IP address then. And it actually has now a 10.105. And if I look over here, this was 10.87. They're back on the same network, but they have unique IP addresses. So if I were to now ping 10.105, I should have connectivity to Linux machine. And over here, I should still be able to ping the 10.87. Remember, we'll need the Control-C to stop the ping over here. All right, so now that they're back on the same network, as far as the network's concerned, these are two individual machines. The host Windows machine is a computer, and this Linux virtual machine is like a separate computer as far as the network is concerned. And that is our VNIC settings, NAT and bridged on our hypervisor. Those are important things to know how to change or recognize how things are set and what should be happening. All right, now that we have the virtual machine up and running, we want to gather proof of that for submission to D2L for this part of the lab. So what we're going to do, let me close all these things out. In the lab here, I'm going to tell you to open the command prompt, and I'm also going to open on our Windows machine, over here on the Windows machine, we're going to open a notepad file. So on the Windows machine, I'm going to open up a notepad file, and I'm going to put it over here that this is my Linux VM proof, if you will, something like that, that we know that's what it is. So over here on my Linux virtual machine, I'll open the command prompt again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just issue an ifconfig, and I want to see, this shows me that it's my virtual machine that I created, and this right here shows me it's set for bridged mode. 192.168.10.105 lets me know it's set for bridge mode, and this virtual machine should be up and running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this. I'm going to do a Control-C or right-click. I'll do a copy. And I'm hopefully going to be able to come over here and right-click paste. If that works, awesome, great. We're just going to save this here. Save this text file as something like, Brown Linux VM config. Use your name, obviously. So I'll go over here and I'll do save as. And I'm going to do... Here's my VM lab podcast. I'm going to leave that TXT file extension, and I'll do Brown Linux VM, what do I call it? Linux VM config. There we go, VM config. And we'll save that as a text file, and we'll be able to submit that right to D2L. If that works, awesome. If for some reason it does not work because the hypervisor is fighting with you, that's fine. Here's what we can also do. On my Windows machine, we're going to do we're going to use the snipping tool. So I'm going to type snipping. When that loads, I can do new, and anything I click and drag, so I'll click and drag this whole thing. I'll click and drag that, and it makes a screenshot for me. And I can save that to the Windows desktop over here. So what I'll do in this case is I'll go to, actually I'm going to documents to my folder that I created. And I'm going to call this my Linux VM config. And I'll just use that as a screenshot. Okay. I'm going to close my snipping tool out. Back to my VM. If I go to that folder, I'm going to go to my Brown folder here. Here's the VM. There's the VM config. There is that screenshot. Okay, so I can always submit that to D2L as proof in case your copy paste did not work, and that does happen sometimes with your hypervisors. Sometimes they're fighting with you, so that is your backup plan to do that. And that is proof of getting your virtual machine built and up and running and working with it, manipulating your NIC and working with it. At this point, what I can do is I can work with the virtual machine a little bit if I want to, see what's here, try some things, that's fine. But when you're done, we're going to click the Linux icon here, the Linux Mint icon. We'll click the power button, and we're just going to do a shutdown. And that'll power this down just like I'd be powering down a PC. And then this is now ready to use the next time we come in the lab room. So there's the first part of our virtual machine and cloud computing lab.